Okay, so this is guest room number 10, I think. And we've got Harris Kenny from OutboundSync. For anybody watching this, every single call I've had with this guy, which is not that many, have been immensely valuable. So I would highly recommend you stick to the end. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, and I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but it's really just this guy has been in the outbound space for a while. He's built a really, really cool platform. And he has visibility that most other people would never be able to get their hands on. Not that he's necessarily looked into all of it and been able to recognize all of the patterns, but he has access to that information, which is pretty cool. So I just kind of want to pick his brain and see if we can kind of pull any gems out of this conversation. So I'll hand it off to you, Harris. I think the best place to start would be if you just introduce yourself and tell us about Outbound Sync and kind of how that came about.
Absolutely. So great to chat. Appreciate it. And good seeing you again as always. Outbound Sync. So I started the company about 3 years ago. I was running a HubSpot and a Smart Lead outbound agency, and we had customers that were looking for our outbound data to sync into the CRM. And at the time, there just wasn't a great solution. There wasn't a great answer for that. And the core problem that we were solving is that people wanted to work out of HubSpot. And so I built something up with low code and used very early versions of ChatGPT to develop the API calls, and then ended up working with an engineer to refactor it into a full, proper application that was kind of more scalable and more secure and all that stuff and easier to authenticate into the user's accounts. And we were off to the races. And so we've been growing since then. We've been adding more sequencers, adding more CRMs, and the market has changed dramatically over that time. We've seen obviously the rise of Clay, which is kind of happening in parallel with all this. And Clay has really, really, really gotten a lot of traction, especially on mid-market and enterprise teams that are looking for ways to kind of develop new ways to go to market.
Mhm.
Our core idea is that you want to get that data back into a system of record for attribution and for workflows. It matters where the data ends up at the end of the day, because it allows you to do a lot more with it. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're building, and happy to talk about what that looks like and kind of why that matters, where like patterns we're seeing in terms of people going across different channels and selecting kind of more specialty tools to do some of this stuff, and then yeah, talk about anything that's on your mind because I love seeing your stuff on LinkedIn and on WhatsApp too. So yeah, I'm happy to keep it casual.
Okay, so that's interesting. I think it'd be interesting to learn a bit more about kind of how it started as well, in the sense that so you're running this agency, and when did you make the decision that you were going to go all in on outbound sync, or was it more gradual?
Yeah, great question. I mean, basically, it was it was a gradual thing. Um, we slowly started incorporating the software in with service projects, and then after we went fully live in October 2023, and we started to get our first like SaaS customers, people who just wanted to use the app without my services through my agency. And that was like the big transformation in terms
Yeah.
of it becoming a SaaS company. And so then after some continued growth with that, I decided in the spring of 2024 to go all in on it. We joined Tiny Seed, which is an accelerator, bootstrapped software SaaS accelerator, and we joined the US Spring 24 batch. There actually a bunch of great European companies are in there. Find Email, which is in France, Scraping
Very
Bee.
cool.
I believe they're also French, although Scraping Bee has since been acquired. But there's tons of great companies across Europe. Debug Bear is a great one. They're in Germany. So we joined Tiny Seed, and it's kind of a global cohort of these B2B SaaS companies, and that gave us a little bit of capital, but really a lot of expertise and community around going all in on building this as a SaaS and shutting down the agency. And so that was a really, really key thing, because I've got young children, we have a home, I've got a lot of bills. I can't just do the whole ramen profitable thing,
Yeah,
because that's not like a good way to feed your kids. So it helped me bridge the gap to kind of get this thing fully off the ground and shut down the agency.
very cool. Um, okay, cool. And then, so how did you go about marketing this platform once you kind of realized that there was a bit of traction, or is it more sort of just that it was kind of taken off, that people were talking about it, and then you didn't really have to worry about that too much at the start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So It was pretty gradual. We work a lot with agencies, a lot of clay agencies and outbound agencies who the clients bring them on to generate new leads for them.
Hmm.
And then, what ultimately ends up happening is the clients want to manage those leads and handle those leads and see what works, see what doesn't work. Um, and so that was a big lever for us. It's been steady, basically. Every month it's been steady growth. We haven't had this like single parabolic moment where it's like, oh, everything changed. It's just been kind of steady each month as we add new tools, as we add more integrations, as we add more partners. We just grow. We just grow every month, basically. I think that what's on the roadmap in terms of like future growth is I think that there are more tools and more channels we can be adding.
Hmm.
What we're seeing in terms of results is that like different markets work differently. Actually, I just had a call yesterday with a clay outbound agency owner in Dusseldorf, and he was asking me about WhatsApp. He said WhatsApp is really big in the market that they sell into, and he was like, "Well, how can I get that WhatsApp data synced back in?" So, I think that well, X is another. I mean, there's just lots of different channels that people are on and using and trying. And there's also other CRMs that people are using, like Adio, London-based startup. But we also got like Close, Pipedrive, Zoho, High Level. So I think for us, like we build a pipes product. So growth means managing more data, connecting with more tools, being easy to work with. And now with the introduction of some of these new models, we're able to develop and write code much, much faster than ever. And so we're
Yeah.
kind of reorienting our business to kind of handle this new reality of what's possible with the frontier models, because what's possible with the frontier models now is unlike anything that ever before. And so it's really changing our business.
Okay, very cool. And just for anybody who's unfamiliar, I've got another question after this. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Outbound Sync, basically you've just got all of these different channels where you're generating leads, and then Outbound Sync acts as the pipe between that lead generator and
Mhm.
then the CRM, or as you say, the system of record. And does
Yeah.
it handle all of the deduping and everything
Hmm.
else, and finding the right people and associating the right values?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a big part of it is managing that data, organizing it, structuring it, putting it in the right places. So, I think that like from a Clay perspective and like a Clay operator perspective, Clay is this really helpful companion to a CRM because it helps
Mhm.
you identify gaps in data. You can also run sequences, and we do support Clay's sequencer, and then get those leads into the CRM as well. So when you're working with Clay and you're using a CRM, you're beginning to really understand the underlying data model of the CRM. So, if you use Salesforce, for example, which is one of the definitely more complicated software products in the market, Salesforce has a lot of quirks to how it works.
It sure
You
does.
have, you have leads, and then leads can be converted to contacts, but separately you have accounts and contacts. You have four main default activity types. Um, and you have to map to one of those. And tasks end up being used a lot in Salesforce. And so you have configurable task subject lines. You can have custom fields attached to one or multiple objects. So, I mean, there's just a lot that goes into it. And so I think like one of our core job is getting that data faithfully into the system of record the way they want it. So they can do
Yeah.
what they need to do they can do what they need to do with it, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Because like
And I
logging an
remember,
email is one thing, right? But
yeah,
handling all that metadata associated
yeah,
with that email is another. Handling associations between objects, updating specific fields, like that's kind of where it can get a little bit more complicated, and why I think we're growing, but also why Clay community is growing because people are wrangling with that data and trying to fix it and resolve things and enrich things and give their team better information at the right time so they can grow. But anyway, sorry, I
so
didn't mean to cut you off.
no, 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 it's fine. This is a conversation, my friend. But it's interesting. So you've got the leads coming in from one side, and then you've got the actual system of record here. And in an ideal situation, all of this data would flow in, and it would map perfectly to the right people, with all of the right information and so on and so forth. And if they didn't exist, it would create new people. And your product, at least from when I've been using it and when I've seen it in use, um, is that it makes it as easy as possible for that connection to happen. Um, and I remember we kind of had a conversation about this before, but why is it that I think it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on this. Why is it that you've never focused on targeting the agencies, and focused on adding a more flexible option? Because you've got the intuitive design, which is easier, but it lacks flexibility, versus you've got the flexible design, which is much less intuitive, where it's essentially like an API, where the data from, for example, SmartLead would come in, and then you would accept that data after it had been enriched or something in a clay table, and then you could pull it in no matter the source. I don't know if that
Hmm.
question makes any sense. I kind of butchered it, but do you get
No,
the
no,
idea?
no.
There's a few
I'm
questions in
following
there.
you. No, no, no. I'm following you. I mean, so we have a very counterintuitive go to market. The end user is the CRM owner. We sell through agency partners. They're oftentimes the buyer. They're the ones
Yeah.
who bring us into a deal. They're the ones who kind of make it happen. But the only reason why they care about what we do is because their customer cares about the data being in the system of record. So agencies are a pass-through customer for us. Our job is to be as invisible as we can be for that agency. We are not a core part of the agencies, um, like day in and day out on our own. Now, where we're growing into is like people have said like, oh, well, why don't I have a dashboard, or why can't I build like reports in Outbound Sync? Our opinion is that all the most important information is in the CRM.
Mm.
So like if we build a pipes product, like I don't look at the pipes in my house. I just use the water. I don't really care what's going on like behind the walls of my house. Um, we've got a series of things we're going to be publishing soon about how to use connectors, HubSpot connectors in ChatGPT and in Claude to extract that campaign data from the CRM and then do analysis there. But the key is like that full life cycle of conversion that can include other people at a company, people that ended up changing companies, um, conversion through other channels. So like they never respond to an email, but they end up answering a phone call, or they never respond to an email or a LinkedIn message, but they end up just visiting the website on their own.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff, it kind of starts to come into play. And so that's kind of how we've been thinking about it. But I mean, I think the point is really valid. Like we're sitting on a lot of data and we want to make it useful. I think the way that we intend on making it useful is by having API endpoints, and we will have an MCP server, and we just open up that data. We're also going to more efficiently store that data so that it's easier and faster for agents to access the information, without ourselves building that front end to interact with it. Basically, I just think there's other ways, other places to manipulate and work with that data than our system of record, than our system of record, our database. I think we can be a storage layer, but not like a place where you're doing a lot of stuff with it. And like, if you want to build out enrichments, like Clay is going to be much better for that. Clay has all of these different ways to manipulate things. Now, maybe we facilitate like a direct enrichment, just do this one field or whatever. But if you want to have like a full out table, like we're never, Clay's raised $200 million.
Yeah.
They've
It
been
wouldn't
building this
make
product
sense
for
for you to
9 years. Like we just can't, we're bootstrapped, right? So we can't, I try not to compete in events we can't win, right? And that's just an event that we can't win. We can't win that race. We can't even be competitive. We don't even belong on the field. But there are other things that we can do where we can be the best in the world. And so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, let's focus on that and try to build a great company that does these things really well, and not try to be good at things that will just never, it's like we're using Heroku for a reason. People use AWS for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got a product that connects two things
Hmm.
ultimately. And the way that
Hmm.
you guys are working on expanding is just increasing the amount of things that you can connect,
Exactly.
and possibly then introducing ways to make those connections or the data that you store, if you look at
Hmm.
it as a data storage platform, more accessible.
Exactly.
And only for the end customer's benefit, because if you can teach them how to then visualize that data or use it more effectively, then they can actually see more of an ROI on their channels. And as a result, because you've facilitated that visibility, and see more of an ROI in your product. Is that kind of right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. But ultimately, it's
Exactly.
still their responsibility. You're not helping them visualize it. You're just giving them, well, you are, but you're giving them the resources to do that themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
or helping them do it in their
in their
system, right?
CRM.
So
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like we don't want to be an open tab, you
yeah,
know. If you're going to look at a report, we want you to look at a report in HubSpot or Salesforce or Adio or Close. Like that or build your own like some more sophisticated customers have like some very advanced reporting tools that they're using and like that's great too, right?
yeah. Um, okay, very cool. Now, I think something that a lot of the people watching this will be interested in hearing is with all of the data that you do aggregate, particularly with email, are there any patterns that you notice in what is working or what generally works, especially for these bigger enterprise companies where it's generally a little bit harder? Or have you looked into it?
Well, that's an area that I think is there's a lot of potential for us, but where we haven't done anything yet. So we're sitting on, over 100 million records
Mm,
of campaigns and outcomes from those campaigns. It's kind of a perfect use case for LLMs. Um, we have definitely some proprietary insights there, looking at campaign results across channels and across tools and across geographies and across industry verticals that I think might be really interesting. Um, we haven't gotten there yet, just to be honest with you. Um, I think that that's going to be something that, as we have more data, our ability to answer those questions gets more and more and more interesting.
yeah.
The less data we have, that it's a nice to have. So I spent 5 years working in the 3D printing industry, U.S. made 3D printer manufacturer, and we sold the printers and we sold the materials, the filament, but we really sold the printers. Like you're not going to buy filament, you're not going to buy the material from us unless you have one of our printers. And
Yeah.
I feel that way about the any sort of like data analysis and insights tools. I think we can do that, and I think it'll be really valuable. I think it'll attract some people to the product. I think it'll help with retention and it'll help with expansion revenue kind of on the margin. But I think that probably like a certain amount of scale we have to hit first before that data is even useful in the first place. And then also a certain amount of scale we have to hit where like that's our biggest problem.
Yeah.
But I think that as we start to, incorporate AI more, I think that that's going to be something that gets super interesting. Like I'm very excited to get there. We're just not there yet.
It's not your core product and it shouldn't be treated as such, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I found last time we spoke, I thought the most interesting thing about your product is that it's not just some data points being sent into Outbound Sync and then sent into the CRM. Like you guys are, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but tracking all outbound activities from these sources and then configuring everything and putting it back into the CRM, which sounds basically the same, but it's not the same because if you can track absolutely every single event, ultimately you get to a stage where eventually, like you were saying, you can actually map the entire course of action for a particular lead. And
Exactly.
you can map it to the CRM data. Because fundamentally, no company cares about how many positive replies they get. They care about how much money that turns into. And that money data and then the meeting data, which then turns into the money data, that lives in the CRM. But the
Exactly.
outbound data then lives in all of these source tools like Smart Lead Instantly and so on. And for ages and for a long time, and still in most companies, there's a real disconnect there. The agencies focus on the outbound data, and then the company themselves focus on the CRM data. And if you're doing really, really well, it's easy for you to kind of see the pattern. But if it's more nuanced, or if you're working with a really, really big company, or even a really, really small company where it's less visible, it can be quite difficult for the company to actually justify particular channels and see the what the journey was for that lead. So for me anyway, I just thought it was fascinating that you could actually map all of that data and you could go get as granular as this is where this person is based, and this is if you have enough data, this is the trend that we're seeing here. And that the majority of the people based in this location or that have this title, for example, are resulting in the most meetings or this particular campaign. And because you
Yep.
store all of that information, you will eventually get to a point where you can actually then help people visualize that. but the storage is the main product.
Yeah. The storage in the CRM definitely. And yeah, I mean, we have probably over 200 different properties and fields that we're writing to. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah,
Now we don't have
very
to write
cool.
to all of them. You have control over the scope of that data sync, but there's just a ton of options.
Um, okay, and so with regards to what you're seeing with these big agencies and these enterprise companies, are you noticing any shifts in how they're treating outbound or go to market as a motion in general? Has anything changed? Anything significant that you've noticed?
Well, I think definitely the biggest thing by far is people expanding channels. That we're seeing that's a huge thing that's going on is people are trying more and more and more channels, definitely. And we're also seeing just the sophistication of the lists that people are working is it's like a whole different level
Yeah,
versus like when I started doing this 6 years ago and working in this space. I mean, in the old era, you had like Dun and Bradstreet and these data providers that you could buy lists from, and then companies like ZoomInfo kind of really ZoomInfo themselves merged a few different companies, but they represented the digitization of those lead databases. And then what we've seen sort of subsequently, and Clay is kind of the poster child for this, but it's the unbundling of from single large databases to multiple source, multiple signal systems where you're tracking from lots of different places. And so from the data perspective, that's kind of been what's going on. And then as that's happened, the tooling has evolved along with it, where you have different sequencing tools and different options to support acting on the new types of data and leads that are surfacing now that just like weren't possible before, like in some cases ever.
yeah, yeah. It really is fascinating. And you were telling me before this call, even just the abilities that the new AI models are giving you guys to expand and grow a lot faster is
Hmm.
it's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're leveraging AI for sure to just ship much faster. I mean, I think our engineering velocity is up um, a lot. I mean, I don't know how to really put an exact number on it, but I mean, we're shipping stuff way, way, way faster than ever before, and it's looking really interesting. It's looking really
Yeah.
interesting what's coming up.
So enterprise teams are just generally using, I'm kind of dumbing down what you said here, just for
Sure.
the sake of simplicity. But they're using lists and um, they're using lists essentially with far more data points, the data points that previously we may not have had access to.
Hmm.
And it's just a whole other level of sophistication. Are you noticing any patterns in what channels tend to work best for specific companies, or anything more kind of helpful for the outbound agencies that might be watching this? Um, or is it still just the basics? I always tell people it's just the same old ding dong, and that really all that's changing is your accessibility to different data points. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe you have a different opinion.
No, I agree with that. I think that things really they've changed and they haven't changed. I mean, the agencies that are really winning are getting the basics right. I mean, they're reaching out to people, reaching out to the right people with the right
Yeah,
message at the right scale. Um, and you know, people that were great, like succeeding, many people who were succeeding a few years ago are still succeeding now. Now there are many great people who have washed out. The agency just wasn't working out for them, or outbound and lead gen wasn't working out for them. They moved into a different role. So it's not for everybody all the time, for sure. But I think it just requires like a persistence and a kind of a determination to keep going with it. It's just hard. It's just a hard work. It's hard work. It's hard work to go out and get new customers and get in front of new people. It's not easy.
yeah.
And
I guess that goes for any business though, not just agencies.
I think that's definitely the case. I mean, I
Yeah,
think any service business, people are going to put you through the ringer. They're expecting a lot. They're expecting you to do things they can't do for themselves. So, like, but the people I know who make it work with an agency, they just don't give up. They just don't quit, you know? And I think that that is true for most businesses. And you have to have a passion for it. You have to be excited about it. You have to find it interesting. Like there was a time where it was kind of easy money and those days are over.
yeah.
Like it is definitely not easy money. these days.
And then for the enterprise companies that you end up working with, either directly or indirectly, is there anything that they tend to say? Um, like what is it about outbound sync that they're most interested in? Is it quite literally just that system of record that they can pull this outbound data into their CRM, or is there a more nuanced kind of often what I find the reason I'm asking this is when I kind of pitch people outbound, it's not so much the outbound that they care about. Um, Different types of companies kind of focus on different elements of that whole sequence. Some people just focus on the whole pipeline aspect and just care about getting more deals. Other people are far more focused about kind of getting involved in modern go-to-market and kind of uplifting how they just generally do things. And then for a lot of service-based businesses, they really, really care about just working with somebody who they believe is actually gonna that has a bit of grit and is actually gonna put in the work, which is just quite now. Obviously, they still care about getting more pipeline, but it's just interesting what they value from a framing perspective. For these bigger enterprise companies, is there anything you've noticed with them?
Yeah, definitely. I think that like the of our bigger companies, so like mid-market, 2,500 employees, when those companies bring someone on, they want somebody that they can let go, that can go off leash, you know,
Mm,
just let the dog go hunt. And they want an agency or an expert to come and move fast and bring in the tooling required to get results because the internal teams are bogged down with permission and discussion and budget. And if they can get a certain amount of budget authorized, they oftentimes want to bring in someone to be like, listen, just go and see what you can find.
yeah.
Now, follow the various rules and whatever, but like operate with fewer constraints than our typical internal team has because the way that we're doing it right now isn't working. So we need somebody to go out and take some chances because the way we're doing it today is not getting us results we need for our company to meet its responsibilities and obligations and take care of its people and grow, you know? And so that like I feel like the spirit of why people get brought in for those bigger companies, that is like the spirit of it.
And then how do you see the go-to-market or outbound space adapting for these bigger companies? Like a lot of them a few years ago, they would just employ a bunch of SDRs and kind of give them a lead list, if even, and just kind of told them, um, go book some meetings. And now that's kind of changing a little bit, or at least from what I've seen. And there's a much more of a focus, or at least if you want, if unless you're selling something that is really, really needed in the market and you don't really need to put that much effort into the outbound, it's generally more a case of you need to put a lot more work into the messaging. And it's not really a job that every individual SDR can do on their own without any help. Um, would you agree with that? First of all, and then second of all, like how would you see the space adapted? Do you think we're going to see fewer SDRs in these companies going forward? Do you think we're going to see more agencies, one person that
Yeah.
manages everything?
Yeah, good question. I think that over the next few years, I don't think agencies are going anywhere. Whether there's going to be more or fewer, I don't know. But like, I don't think they're going anywhere. They play a very important role. Um, I don't think that SDRs are going to disappear, but I think their job is going to change for sure. I think their job is going to get more technical. I think more and more people are going to be
Okay.
using tools like Cursor and Claude Code, Codex in sales roles to build lists and do their job. I definitely think that's true. Um, I think that this split that's happened between kind of the campaign operator and the SDR role, that I think is here to stay. I think that you're going to potentially see more of a move towards full cycle, or at a minimum, just like having the SDRs focus more on those conversations that are being generated. I think the campaign operator idea, whether that's internal or an external agency, I think that has some durability because this stuff is technical. But then I
Yeah, I
think the
agree.
question is like, how do we get feedback back to the campaign operator? And I don't think that's going to be in the form of like Slack messages and meetings and things like that. I think it's going to be more in the form of like, it'll look more like a pull request in GitHub than it will like a big block of text, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So you think whether it's an agency or an internal team of people or one person in a company, there's going to be one group or one entity responsible for actually coming up with the motion. And then the SDRs are going to be far more focused on actually then less so the execution to create some engagement or get some interest, and more so just once there's a bit of interest to then turn that into a sale. So more of a, I don't know, cold call focus, managing the conversation, um,
Yeah.
as you said, kind of giving feedback back to the campaign manager, whatever you want to call them, and possibly then somebody who's in charge of all of that, and then the sales calls and things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
how do you see tools like Lemlist and them fitting into that, where
Well, like
it's
a lem list
seat
is
based?
that's like an ABM style tool. I think there's a role for lower volume ABM outreach, definitely. We're going to have a Lemlist integration soon. Initially, we're going to have that through our master inbox integration.
Hmm.
So when master inbox ships, we'll have that Lemlist integration through them. I think there's absolutely room for ABM style tools at lower volume. I think especially when you have a higher price point. Um, yeah, I don't think that workflow is going away, but I think those tools have been misused in the past. I think that probably I could see people having fewer seats on tools like that, um, because they're running less volume through it, or few people are responsible for running those types of motions. But the idea of like a sales rep owning individual account lists and working that individual account list, I guess I would say like overall as a total proportion of campaign share, I do anticipate that will go down, and I think it'll be replaced more by signal and trigger based monitoring, and then more like real time execution in campaigns based on events that are happening, rather than like once a quarter work in my list kind of
Yeah,
thing.
very cool.
Yeah. Good questions. Not easy answers for some of these. I mean, I'm just guessing, I don't know.
No, it's just interesting to get somebody else's perspective on it.
For sure.
Okay, interesting. Um, are there any trends that you're excited for? I mean, it could be the same things we just spoke about there, but is there anything else we haven't spoken about yet that you're just excited for? You're going like AI, for example.
Yeah, I mean, definitely AI is very exciting and it's also very scary. I think a lot is changing very, very quickly. I think these new frontier models change everything. I think that they're able to do things and these like, I mean, cron jobs have been around for a long time, which is when you just like kind of run something repeatedly, like on a chronological cycle. But like things are getting pieced together where cron jobs are being combined with agents who are executing on workflows, and then they're able to kind of close the loop. All these new tool use applications are, I think, really compelling, where agents are now using the tools that, and so like building things from scratch is cool. Vibe coding is cool, but so is getting more leverage with the existing tools that you're using. So, I mean, yeah, I think AI in general is like the mega trend. It's the most important thing that's happening in outbound, um, and in go to market in general by far. I don't think anything is more important than that. And I think that if someone wants to be in this space, they need to be following it. And I think the best place to do that is definitely on X. Like, there's no question the most interesting cutting edge conversations about what's happening are happening there for sure. I rejoined it for the explicit purpose of kind of following AI a couple months ago. And there's just nothing like it. I mean, you can see the core developers. I mean, I was reading about Claudebot months ago, and it has like totally taken over in the last couple of days. But if anybody who's been on X and following the stuff was already knew about that project for a while. So
Yeah.
like it's just literally a way to live in the future because developers are posting and engineers are posting about what they're building right there, and they're testing new things and saying what's available. And Sam Altman has a direct account there where he's talking about what he's working on. So there's just nothing like it. I think in terms of the information environment for seeing like what's new. I think that short form, microblogging, which is what it was originally, I think it's a great place to be for that. Stuff on LinkedIn, it's just not the same. Reddit and Hacker News, it's just not the same. But there's lots of ways to get your news. But I think that's a really good, if you want to know about what's going on with this stuff, I think for me, it's been transformative. I mean, it's been hugely helpful.
Yeah. And then for people who, I wouldn't necessarily people who are say people who are just getting into the space, but for people who have been in the space for not that long, let's say somebody has been an SDR for a few months, um, or who has just started their agency, what advice would you give them? Would you just tell them to kind of not necessarily hop on this trend, but get more familiar with these tools? become more technical, or at least partner with somebody who's more technical? Um, where should they be focusing their efforts? Is it more on the thinking side of things? Is it more on the u- using AI to handle the execution? Is it something entirely different?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it depends on how everyone's different, in terms of what, either if you have a project you're really excited about, like see if AI can help you do that, or incrementally find like the kind of the closest application of AI that like makes you a little bit like a little uncomfortable. So if you're used to talking in a chat window, set up Claude Code, or set up Claude in Chrome or something like that. Kind of go to the next feature that you're not maybe currently taking advantage of. I think that would be the best way to kind of like incrementally move your skill set and your knowledge forward. You don't have to do everything at once. These things change really quickly, and if you feel behind, there's a new thing coming out tomorrow, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Like today, Sonnet 5 is coming out, but like yesterday, OpenAI's Codex IDE was the best thing. It was the cat's pajamas. It was the most important thing in the world. But then on Monday of this week, Claude Code was taking over, and Claude and OpenAI is done, and they're never going to be around anymore. So it's just like everyone's just kind of taking turns. When Nano Banana came out, Gemini is the number one thing, and no one's ever going to touch it. Grok has this like real time feed, and now they're merging with Elon Musk's other company, and so now so it's just like there's always another bus, I guess is what I'm saying. So just like kind of get on the next one and not don't worry about the ones that you've missed in the past, because like here comes the next one, and that would be, I guess, my core advice about it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, I think they're all the questions that I can come up with. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, man. I mean, we've covered a ton. I mean, this is great. And I no, this is all so fresh. I've never talked about it, basically anybody with about what we talked about here with basically anybody. So no, I mean, I'm tapped. I don't have any more thoughts on this stuff. I mean, this is like we'll see. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Just got to get out there and build.
Actually, I do have one more question. This is a really important one, so give us some thought. Um,
Yeah.
but where did you get that spam picture in the
Oh,
background? That is the
yeah.
best picture I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, so my wife was at a conference in Hawaii, and across the street from her conference was the Waikiki Spam Jam, which is an annual like food festival and event hosted in Hawaii, um, and hosted by I think Hormel, I don't know the company that makes spam, and so she got it for me there from their like merch tent, and I framed it. And when I took it to the frame store, they were like couldn't believe it. They said it's the funniest thing they'd ever framed. They were like, "Why are you doing this?" I was like, "Well, it's kind of a long story, but it's about my job and it's about spam email." They didn't fully understand. I'm like, "Well, some people might perceive some of these things as spam, but we try to. It's kind of tongue in cheek. We want to send good emails. We want to send good LinkedIn calls and all that stuff. We want to get results for people, but it's just kind of fun.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing ever. Well, it's not the hardest thing ever, but it's quite difficult to explain cold email to people who are unfamiliar with it as an industry sometimes.
Very,
Um,
very hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you go, Harris. Always nice chatting to you. If anyone has any
Oh, you
questions
too,
for him,
man.
hit him up on LinkedIn, outboundsync.com. Great company. And yeah. All right, cool. Nice chatting to you.
Thanks, buddy. Good seeing you.